sisters in Christ, today my message for today is gonna be about the what meats or what exactly are we supposed to be able to eat, being in the Church of God and following the Word and following the things that are spoken of inside the Bible. Now, probably the main reason, one of the biggest reasons why that we probably don't have a lot of members is because the deal breaker for most people, especially coming from different religions, is the amount of food that they can't eat. I remember talking to, when I was a sophomore in high school, I was talking to I think it was Hmong, and Asians, they really like eat a lot of seafoods like sharks or like shrimp, especially, a lot of shellfish, and that's probably and evidently in the Bible, it lists a lot of different things that we can't eat, and if we are to follow God, then we have to follow this law. Now, a lot of people say that this law was something that was written by Moses, or was one of the ordinances that was written by man. And so that's the first thing I want to cover, is that it's not. It was already around before, even before the time of Moses, even before the time of Israel, before Jacob was even born. This law was already around, and you can read this in Genesis chapter 7, verses 2. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. And then skip to verse 9. There went into Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God hath commanded Noah. So Noah, the time of Noah precedes the time of even Abraham or even Jacob of the Israelites. So you can't say that this law of clean and unclean was made by Moses when he made which is the law that we no longer follow. You can't say that the law of clean and unclean is an ordinance that was just created by man. This was God talking to Noah in the time of Noah about which animals to take in the ark and how many of each kind of animal. And so since God already cites that there was already a distinction between clean and unclean, it shows that God already set down a law between animals that are clean and animals that are not clean. So for a specific list of which animals or which meats that we can eat, you can read this in the list exists in Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 to 31, which is that's a lot of verses, but Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 to 31. Now, sometimes people are still confused of what clean and unclean mean. So after you're done, if you ever read, once you read Leviticus chapter 11, 1 to 31, you can then go to verses 46 and 47, which states, "This is the law of the beasts and of the fowl and of every living creature that moveth in the waters and of every creature that creepeth upon the earth, to make a difference between unclean and the clean, and between beasts that may be eaten and the beasts that may not be eaten." So when you say clean animals or unclean animals, or clean beasts and unclean beasts, it gives a distinction between what animals or what things you can eat and what you cannot eat. And so is there a prophecy inside the Bible that states what will happen to those people who eat of unclean meat? And there is a prophecy. It's stated in the Bible in the book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verses 15 to 17. 66 verses 15 to 17. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. They that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind the tree in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. So it already shows, in this verse it only uses the term swine's flesh, but that's because it's the most popular one that a lot of people like to eat. So for me it's a pretty good example for, the beasts that you can't eat. And it says here,
unclean,
yeah,
abomination.
yeah, and it says basically that the Lord will punish you. And we already know that the Lord is going to be coming in the future. So it means that this law is still in effect even in the future.
It's very clear.
Now, there are a lot of different verses that a lot of people try to use. Maybe they're confused by their meaning, because there's a lot of other verses that especially in the New Testament, that talk about food. And that's probably the key reason why a lot of them are confused. So let's tackle one of those subjects. In one of the verses is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, 7 to 13. Chapter 8, 7 to 13. Howbeit there is not in every man that knowledge, for some with conscience of the idol into this hour eat it as a thing offered into an idol, and their conscience being weak is defiled. But meat commendeth us not to God, for neither if we eat are we the better, neither if we eat not are we the worse. But take heed, lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. For if any man see thee, which has knowledge, sit at meat in an idol's table, shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are offered to idols? And though thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish, for whom Christ died? But when ye sin so against the brethren, and wound their weak conscience, ye sin against Christ. Wherefore, if meat make my brother to offend, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend. And so it's stated in there that it doesn't in verse 8, in 1 Corinthians 8, verse 8, it states that, it kind of says there, and a lot of people like to cite this, that even if we eat something, it won't make us worse. The thing that you have to remember, though, that and the thing that you have to see this as in a context, it's talking about meat that was offered to an idol. And so this does not specifically talk about unclean meat, and it doesn't talk about meat that we can't eat. Another subject that a lot of people like to bring up is found in Mark chapter 7. Mark chapter 7. And then Mark chapter 7 verses 18 to 20. And he said unto them, Are ye so without understanding? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? Because it entered not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of man, and he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. So during this time, I believe they're talking about, I think Jesus didn't wash his hands first before he ate. And they said that it's a sin to do that. because it's one of the ordinances, one of the written ordinances that Moses wrote down that he was going against. And Jesus said that at this time, he said that, if you eat something, it can't defile you. That's the verse that they like to use, verse 18. But if you go back on it, if you read verses 5 and 7 to 9, it says, "Then the Pharisees and scribes asked him, 'Why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands?' 7 to 9, "Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching of doctrines and commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of God, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such like things do ye. And he said unto them, Full well ye reject the commandment of God, that ye may keep your own tradition." So he's talking about the tradition, the written ordinances that Moses made that included washing the hands.
And plus, Giselle, they are all the same. The Jews and Jesus, they are all the same. They are talking about the food, the meat that are food.
Yeah.
Not the meat.
Yeah.
They're talking about the food.
Yeah, they're talking about food, and they're saying that in this context, a lot of people like to use it because Jesus already, they like to say that Jesus already said that, whatever goes inside your belly, it can't defile you.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that they were talking about a tradition where they had to wash their hands before eating. And another verse or another passage that a lot of people like to use is Paul's letter for the Colossians, which is found in Colossians chapter 2, verses Colossians chapter 2, verses 14 to 16. Colossians chapter 2, 14 to 16. "Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which are contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holiday, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days." So these things that Paul is writing here right now, it's in verse 14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances. He's talking about the laws that Moses made. Now, in the beginning of my message, I already said that the law of clean and unclean already precedes even the age of their father Abraham. The law of clean and unclean was already around in the time of Noah, when God already made a distinction of those. So when they say anything about ordinances, you can't include the law of clean and unclean with the ordinances because they predate the ordinances. And so the last passage that a lot of people like to use, because it includes unclean beasts in a vision, is with Paul. And that's found in Acts chapter 10. Acts chapter 10, verses 9 to 16. Acts chapter 10, verses 9 to 16. "On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh into the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. And he saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descending into him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. Now, notice at this time, first of all, is that at this time, Peter, this was the time that Jesus already died on the cross, right? He already died. But Peter is still citing the fact that he still doesn't eat unclean food. If Christ died to get rid of the ordinances that man made, that Moses made, then Peter wouldn't be worried about unclean food. So that's one thing. A second thing is that people who use this verse don't read more into the chapter on what exactly the meaning is, because even Peter himself is still confused after the vision. And so if you read later on in the chapter in verse 28, it tells them of the context exactly what that vision states. And he said unto them, ye know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come into one of another nation. But God hath shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. So again, they're talking about a tradition a Jewish tradition where they're not supposed to mingle themselves with people who they see unclean or common, because it's part of their tradition. But the vision that was given to him by God showed him that it's not good for you to do that, because all types of people are now accepted by God. And so these are just a few the different passages that a lot of people like to use to say that there's no such thing as clean and unclean anymore. But the most important thing you have to remember, though, is that the law of clean and unclean was already predated. It was already there during the time of Noah, which means that even if Christ died and got rid of the ordinances that the Jewish people used to follow, or they still follow right now, but the ordinances inside the Old Testament, it means that they got rid of the ordinances of the Old Testament, not any laws that were there before those ordinances were made. And so hopefully next time somebody asks us why we don't eat that, we could just say that we can cite these verses. Or if they try to use one of these verses or one of these passages, tell them that try to read it in the context of it. So